Welcome, everybody. I am very happy to be here tonight to present our July webinar. I had to think what month it was then for a second. I've been setting up our August one this morning. So today we are going to be talking about onboarding employees and really how you set people up for success, because onboarding, I think a lot of people think about induction. They think about, oh, well, what do I do when they start? But onboarding is actually a process that goes for about a year. And if you really want to set somebody up for success, it is incredibly important that you think about the journey that an employee is going to go through when they join your organization and how you can enhance that and make sure that it's something that really sticks with them and helps them stick with your organization. So before we get started any further, this is not working. Give me 1 second. I'm going to make sure that I'm sharing my right screen. Bear with me a moment. Nothing like technology to make things a little bit more difficult for you. Okay, just bear with me a second. Okay. We'll try that again. 1 moment, sorry. Okay, we will come back onto here. That sounds like it's a lot better. So here we go. This is working now. Excellent. All right. So let's get started with our webinar on onboarding employees, setting a foundation for success. So I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians on the land that we are meeting on tonight, all of us wherever we are in Australia, and pay respect to elders past, present and emerging. And I would certainly also like to extend that to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander peoples that may be with us today. So for those of you who do not know me, my name is Carly Saw. I'm the founder and director of Strawberry Seed Consulting. I started my HR journey in 1996, although I did do a year of work experience in between my uni degree as well. So I have officially hit the 30-year mark in HR. I founded Strawberry Seed 12 years ago, and it has just grown over that time. I am true crime obsessed. I am also very, very passionate about the Brisbane Lions and looking forward to another premiership this year. And I honestly prefer my chickens to my children these days because they're getting a bit older and, my chickens actually like me and talk to me. So I am the director of Strawberry Seed Consulting, and we provide HR support to small businesses up to medium-sized businesses all around the country. And this is my gorgeous team who help me do that. And essentially we help from everything from hiring to firing and what happens in between. If it falls under the banner of Fair Work, it probably falls under the banner of Strawberry Seed. And the analogy I often use for our business is that your accountant sets up your financial systems and gives financial advice. We are simply people systems and people advice. So let's get right into it. Well, why does it actually matter how you onboard an employee? Why is it something we should be worried about? So as I mentioned earlier, onboarding does not start on the employee's first day. It starts with the very first interaction that they have with your business. And that's probably when they click a button to apply for a job. So, at its core, it is really about how you're going to make sure that a new employee integrates into your organisation, making sure that they understand what's expected of them, what the culture is, that they fit into that culture, ultimately to get them to perform at their best. And it is the first stage in their employee life cycle, and it's going to set the tone for everything that happens. So if they have a positive experience during their onboarding, they are much more likely to have a positive experience as they grow within your organisation. And, that sets it that really strong stick at the beginning, that strong foundation. So what are the sort of things that, are crucial and are really, for those that might be trying to sell to a business owner, why onboarding is really important? Well, It's an opportunity to embed your culture from day one, from the moment you have your first interaction. What sort of organization are you? How do you treat people? It's about retaining employees both short term, so making sure that new employees that you've just invested time and money to bring on board are going to stick, but also long term. If you've had a good experience from the moment you've entered an organization, you are much more likely to want to stay there and have a connection with them. It's about underpinning performance outcomes. So, it can take time for someone to get to their full level of productivity when they come on board. You're not going to be getting 100% from somebody on day one. So the better your onboarding, the more likely you are going to reduce the amount of time it takes for them to be productive, which also means they're going to be performing quicker and hopefully making you money earlier, because ultimately employees are there to do a job, and as business owners, you certainly need them to do that job. So that's really helpful to be able to get someone up to speed very, very quickly so they feel supported and they're able to just start getting into what they do. Which the converse side of that is it's reducing errors and mistakes. The better you are at setting someone up for success, the less likely they are to be making mistakes, to be making errors. And really it's about building engagement. So if someone is engaged with your organization from their first interaction with you, that is going to be something that is gold to you for the rest of the time that they're with you. So the last one there is ensuring compliance. And look, there are certainly some elements today that I will briefly touch on around compliance, but really I want to talk more about how we ensure and what sort of systems and processes we can put in place to make sure that we tick the boxes we need to around onboarding. So I like the onboarding is not an event, it is a leadership strategy. So rather than seeing it as a compliance exercise or seeing it as a box to tick, it is actually about starting off really strong, solid foundations. So you as a leader can make sure that that person is going to be a valuable part of your business. So it's really an investment. And I think that's what people often forget, that there is an investment required to get value. And it's really important that you invest the time in actually deciding what that looks like so that it's effective, but also invest the time in onboarding people properly. So I'm going to go through 3 phases of onboarding. Phase 1 is very much about recruitment, and I'm not going to be talking about how you recruit necessarily. I'm talking about setting those first impressions and foundations for your organisation, which is incredibly important. Phase 2 is pre-boarding and up to their first day. So how are you going to welcome and prepare them to enter your organisation? And phase 3 is their first 12 months. As I said, that first year is, it's not, oh, well, they're here now on first day and we forget about them. It needs to be an ongoing and thought out process. So that's about embedding and elevating an employee. So let's start down the first phase of recruitment on those first impressions. The way you treat a candidate tells them exactly how you treat your team. If you treat the recruitment process as everybody who is coming through the door as a candidate should just be, very thankful that we're giving them a job, and you're a cost, so I'm going to make sure that you understand that, then that is a pretty clear indicator to employees before they've even walked in the door what sort of employer you're going to be. So from the first click to the offer, which to me is that entire recruitment process, that's going to set the tone for that employment relationship. So the level of professionalism you show, how you handle and how you communicate, what impressions they get of your business and your culture are going to make a big difference in terms of whether even someone will come on board. And certainly I know we do recruitment in our organisation, and there have been times when we have recruited for a client and we are getting feedback that because they're getting people and they're getting candidates, even in a tough market, and they're interviewing, but when we go to offer, those people aren't accepting those offers, and they're not accepting offers because of the fact that they don't necessarily want the job. But after the interview, we have a very high percentage of drop off, which tells us that it's probably something to do with what is happening in that interview process that is making people think, there's a few red flags here, I've got other options, I'll go and explore those. So the experience that a candidate has is incredibly important. It really does matter. People talk. If you're in a regional area, you're in a close-knit industry, people know people. And I've certainly seen that in the Geelong market where we are located down on the Torquay and the Surf Coast. We're very close to the Geelong region. And, we have a lot of clients in that area. And I can think of a client of ours from the past where they really struggled to actually recruit in for certain roles because there was a reputation in the community. And Geelong is a city. Geelong is not a small town, but it's probably 2 degrees of separation. And there is just a general um, thought in the community that you don't want to work there because people know that there's issues. I certainly think of the fact that Target head office has relocated now, quite a few years ago now, probably at least 10 years ago, from Geelong back down towards Melbourne. And I think that probably had something to do, and I might be wrong, but I think it probably had something to do with the fact that they had a reputation of not being a great organisation to work for. And I was only in Geelong a couple of years when I already knew that. So, I didn't even look at jobs that came up at Target when I moved down here, purely because I already knew about their reputation as an employer. So, people talk. People, particularly in close-knit communities, talk. So making sure the experience someone is having with your organisation, even if they're not successful, is going to be really important. So, those positive experiences they have are going to boost your reputation, even if they aren't hired, because they're not going to say bad things about you. They might say, oh, I went for a job with ABC company, but, they were really lovely and they communicated with us all the way through. And, they actually made that not an unpleasant process. And we have had candidates, and I certainly personally have spoken to candidates when I've had to be ringing them to say they weren't successful, who have thanked us for it being a process where they were communicated with, because it is not something that everybody does. So actually doing this right not only makes you stand out in terms of, setting up a strong foundation, but it can actually make you stand out against other employers who don't even communicate with people. So obviously those negative experiences on the counter side of that are going to put off candidates or employees making referrals. So if you've given an average experience to an employee that is coming on board with you, and someone, they might know someone who could join your organisation, particularly in industries where word of mouth is gold, but they may not actually decide to tell that person because they'll go, I don't know yet, I still haven't decided, they haven't, you haven't embedded them, as opposed to, oh my God, I haven't even started yet. And they've been fantastic. It's the best experience I've had. So trying to have a smooth process that's respectful to candidates and will reduce things like ghosting, negotiation friction, and onboarding issues from day one. So what will someone experience from click to offer? This is what you want them to experience. You want them to have an ad that has no surprises in it. You want to have a process that's easy to navigate, that doesn't have like too many steps involved, that doesn't go on and on and on. Certainly many years ago when I first started in HR, it wasn't uncommon for a recruitment process to go for 4 weeks. With technology and just with the job market and just the way the world works now, it is much quicker. It's very rare now that you would say, I'm posting a job and I'm not going to look at applicants for 2 weeks. And then I do, and then I'll take a week to look at them. And then I might do phone screening. You will lose candidates along the way, particularly in industries where there is a shortage of people, where there's, it's very competitive. Then you need to have a very easy to navigate process that's very clear, that you're communicating and letting people know where they are in the process, and you're setting some expectations on the next steps. When it comes to interview and shortlisting, you want to make sure that you are communicating and how you're scheduling with people, giving them all the information that they need, making sure that they feel welcomed. It's a structured interview, it feels professional, and has time for them to ask questions. You want to make sure that you're very quick to follow up after an interview, that you're respectful with your feedback if they're not successful, and you invite them to stay in touch for future roles. And, when you're making the offer, you want to make sure that that is really setting up that good foundation. So those key elements of the process are going to be clear, respectful communication. That means at all stages, not just when you're making an offer, but from day one. Even just something as simple as responding to every applicant saying, thank you very much for your application. We are currently in the process of reviewing them. If you if you haven't heard from us by this date, that means you won't have been successful to the next stage of the process, and we wish you all the best for your job search journey. Something like that lets the person know that you've already told them, if you haven't heard back from me by this date, then you're probably not going to hear from me at all. So they're less likely to contact you and sort of interrupt your day. And the fact is, you've just acknowledged their receipt of their application. I believe that the longer somebody has been involved in a recruitment process, the higher the level of the communication and the touching of base needs to be. So you need to make sure that if you have, for me, if someone has come in, has done a phone screening, I would at least send them an individual email thanking them for their time. If someone has come in for a face-to-face interview or a Zoom interview, I would call them to tell them that they're not successful. So when you're setting up interviews, make sure you're communicating very clearly in writing the who, where, what, when, and how. Right down to here's where you can park. Here's how long that parking goes for. Here's how long I think the interview may last. If you live in a city, a metropolitan area where there might be parking restrictions and it's going to be a 3-hour interview process, they need to know that they're going to park somewhere that's not a 2-hour zone. All of those kind of things make a difference on the impression. And, sending those follow-ups is so important. Now, we want to have structured and human-centered interview. Interviews are a two-way conversation. They are a two-way process where you're assessing the candidate on their fitness to work for you, and they're assessing you as your fitness to be their employer. So I still see people seeing it as, well, they should just be grateful that I'm talking to them, and it's, but you've really got to make sure you're selling your organisation, your business. So having some set interview questions can make you look very professional. Making sure you read the resume before you come in. I've seen some of those remind me who you are again moments, particularly when someone is doing multiple interviews. And look, that can be, I've been there, I've done that, I've done back-to-back interviews, and it can be hard. But when you schedule them, schedule time between them so you have time to sit back and reread the resume. If you're organising interviews and someone else is going to be in them, make sure they're briefed on who the employee is, what their needs, what their strengths are. Make sure they've got their resume. Make sure they're organised so that they go into the actual conversation ready to do what they need to do. Leave time for candidates to ask questions. Candidates need the opportunity to be able to ask you questions, and it's good that they're doing that. That's a really good sign that they're interested in your role. But also be honest. Don't hide things about the role, the culture, what the expectations are going to be. We do see clients, even in ads or interview stage, who are actually not being truthful in regards to what they're actually looking for. And that then is a disconnect between either what they've advertised in an interview, and candidates are coming back to us going, well, what they talked about in interview is nothing like what you told us and what happened in the ad. Or what happens in the interview process is then also not what happens once they start. So you want to use the opportunity during the recruitment process to actually showcase your culture. What is it? Who are you? And why is it? Why would someone want to come and work for your organisation? Why is that role existing? How do you like to communicate as a manager if you're going to be their direct manager? Like, how do you like to work? You've got lots of opportunities to sell your culture along the way using videos or websites and your website, social media. Last year when we were advertising, I got all of my team to record a little video on why they love working at Strawberry Seed. And we put that up as a TikTok and we put it on all our social media. And so many of the people that actually applied for the role commented and said how much they loved seeing that and how that really swayed them in terms of wanting to definitely apply. The other part of that, though, was it wasn't just candidates that saw it. It was actually really helpful outside of that as well. So the thing that I always do and I'm really big on is involving your team in the interview process, because not only can they give you a sense check on someone, because they're going to look at them from a different perspective, but they give, them being able to be in an interview without you having a discussion with a potential candidate, and it might just be the final two, or maybe they do the first round of interviews and you only do the final, allows the candidates, because you're going to tell them all these things about how you run your organisation, what's important to you, but you can say lots of things. It doesn't mean that they're true, right? When I used to go for interviews as a HR practitioner, when it was my turn to ask questions, I would ask things like, well, okay, you've told me you've got these great values. What do you do for your employees that you don't have to? Because someone can have some brilliant values in their organisation about people at the centre of everything, but if all they do is the minimum that they must, then that tells me that that's just words on a wall. So you need to make sure that, that they're getting the full impression of your organisation. And that's often possible because you can bring in the people that make up the culture, the people that are actually in your organisation, and they can help you, I guess, do that sale as well. And it's important that you close it out, right? When someone is unsuccessful, I mean, look, it'd always be nice if we could make the successful phone call last, but we kind of have to make that first, because if that person doesn't accept, you might need to go to your second choice. But you want to thank people. Anyone that has come in for an interview with you, you want to thank them and say, look, thank you so much for your interest in working for us. And, we really wish you all the best. You want to give feedback particularly if someone asks for it, be respectful. Like sometimes it's the case that, look, you've got 2 or 3 candidates and any of them could be successful, and you're like, these are all great, I just had to pick someone. And I'll be honest with someone in that situation. However, if someone didn't quite get to what we were looking for, I try and be as honest as I can with them about why that is. When I can put my finger on it, sometimes it's not that simple. But, look, I think you'd be a brilliant fit for an organisation, but, I'm just not sure if you're the right fit for us. And that's okay, because it's not just about skills, it's also about fit. And at the end of the day, if you've got someone who was a great fit, who was such a close second that you were like, this was literally we had to pick someone, and like it was that close, like there's nothing you could have done differently to change our mind, you want to be asking that person, hey, if we have another position come up in the near future, would you be interested in us reaching out to you? Because you might save yourself money and time by being able to reach out to them. And I've certainly filled a role where someone had to withdraw from the process, and I was able to go back to the person who was my second choice and say, listen, hey, are you still available? Even though it was a few weeks down the road, and they were, and they ended up coming on board, and they're still working for us now. So communicate with someone like they already work for you. Make sure that you are, treating them like you would treat one of your employees. And hopefully that's a really positive experience. Look, little things matter, like someone spelling your name correctly, or actually saying it correctly. Like I've walked into interviews and I've said to someone, now if I was in the HR seat and I've got someone who's got a name that might be difficult to pronounce, or it might not be clear how to pronounce it, what I try and do is when I've spoken to the person to set up the interview, I actually ask them, look, can you, I just want to be clear, make sure I'm pronouncing your name correctly. And people appreciate that. As someone whose name is Akali with a C and an I, my name is often spelt wrong. So I appreciate that people double check those things, or, and it's not that but I definitely notice when someone hasn't. So if someone's sending me an email and they're spelling my name wrong, I'm like, that's a bit of an issue. If someone's pronouncing, their name wrong, look, people are probably used to it if they've got an unusual name. But if I was the person organising the interview, I would ask them exactly how to pronounce it. And I would then make sure that anyone involved in the interviews knew that, so that it's a sign of respect. Use warm and welcoming language in any emails or phone calls. Like it's very easy to have a very basic templated email and just bang something out. But, make it sound like you, make it sound like the language that you would use in the culture of your organisation. And, just keep people up to date like you would if they were an employee. So a few practical ideas for you to implement in this first phase that might be helpful. You could set up templates on email to respond to applicants. Now, if you're using something like Seek and other sort of platforms like that, they actually can might even have ones that you can use, but I always like to customize those. While Seek has its, hey, we've got your application, we always make sure that we send our own, email in our own language that's from us, that makes it really clear that, it's personalized. Make sure you've got an interview guide and brief everyone before interviews. If you haven't already done so, create a candidate journey map for your clients, for yourself and your business, sorry, and make sure that you map out how do you currently recruit? What is the journey someone goes through? What are the touch points you have with them? What do they see, hear, and feel at each step? And can you improve that in any way? Make sure that you've got a system for not missing follow-ups post-interview. And look, sometimes things happen where, the process itself gets interrupted because there is a delay or someone is off sick or something like that. Just keeping someone informed, sending them an email and say, hey, I know we said we'd be back to you by today. Unfortunately, someone's got the flu, so it might be delayed for a week. That keeps that person interested. It keeps them warm. And as I said, match that effort with the effort. The more effort they've put into, and more steps they've been through with you, is more effort you should put in communicating back with them. Look for opportunities to showcase your culture, whether it's a working with us section on your career page, of videos that you can create with your team to send to candidates that are coming in for interview, little things that can just be a touch that makes a difference. Recruitment, the process itself is a great opportunity to create that pipeline of candidates, not just, from the people that you've interviewed, but from the people who've worked with people that you've interviewed and actually end up working for you, because those people can bring you in a referral network of a whole heap of new people. And if they like what working for you, they might make the introductions. I've just included a couple of little templates in here just as a bit of an example. So these are candidate communication templates. One's to thank someone for applying for a role, and one's for someone who's unsuccessful after interview. Now, these are fairly basic, and I encourage you to make them your own. I encourage you to put something personal in them. The thank you for applying one might be more generic, but if someone's unsuccessful at interview, I actually not only give them a phone call, but I would then send them an email again, thanking them for their time. If it was someone that, you would love to keep their details on file, confirm that with them, because, it's not a given that someone might want you to do that. And, I keep in personal details. So sort of saying to them, I just want to confirm that you're happy for us to do that. And again, all those little things can make a difference. And this is such an easy thing to write for yourself. And I think where people go wrong is they think that anything that they write needs to be really overly formal, and it doesn't. It really doesn't. It can be written in a way that you would write it if you were talking to somebody. Business does not have to be as structured and formal. It's funny, like even with, cover letters, people feel like when they write a cover letter, they write them in a way they would never speak. So, speak in your own voice and, really represent your company in the right way. Now, in terms of phase 2, that is what I'm referring to as pre-boarding and the first day. So we've decided whether this is the right person for us. And now we're talking about the experience that they're going to have from the time we offer them the job through to the first day on work with us. So a successful first day doesn't start at 9 a.m. It starts the moment they say yes. So we want to make sure from the time that they say yes, they're still getting that same amount of interaction with you. Sometimes it's a quick start, sometimes there's a lot of time in between, but more often than not, there's a little bit of a lag, potentially, particularly if they have to give notice. So being thoughtful in your pre-boarding process, putting some care into it, is going to, again, contribute to the tone of this experience with you. And if they have a poor first day, or like they literally haven't heard from you for like weeks and they're not sure what's happening and they have to keep reaching out to you, that can undo any good work you did during the recruitment process. You have to be the coach. You have to plan how you're going to bring this person into your team. So a welcome email that confirms their start date, their start time, their start location, that might have an explanation in it on what to expect on their first day, what it might look like. Do not underestimate helpful logistics. Helpful logistics like, where should you park your car? Again, if there's parking restrictions, like there's 4-hour restrictions near the office, but here's a map that says where you can park. Dress. The amount of times people don't talk about these things and don't necessarily ask the question. Often people will dress up when they come in for an interview, but if you're a organisation that are quite casual, or you're going to have a uniform there for them, if you haven't already had those discussions, like or even if you have, if they've been through an interview process, they're not going to remember every word you said. So confirm all those details with them. Hey, I'll have your 3 shirts here for you on your first day, or our dress code is quite casual unless you've got you're not going to have any big meetings on day one, so just dress comfortably and casually. All of those things people appreciate. I will also add one of my absolute biggest, almost my top tip when it comes to starting someone. Please don't start them on a Monday. Or don't start them on your first day of the week, because what happens is, if you start someone on a Monday morning, think about when you get to work on a Monday and you're like trying to get organized for the week, and this person's starting and you've got emails that might have come in late on Friday. You're not necessarily ready for them. I am a massive fan of starting someone on a Thursday, or Thursday is my sweet spot, because even if they're full time, they will work Thursday and Friday. Then they'll have a weekend. So they'll have 2 days of sort of probably being overwhelmed by a lot of information. And then they can start fresh on Monday. And also you have 3 days to be ready, be organized for them to come on board. So it's one of my sweet spot tips, I think, that can, because you also need to make sure you've got the capacity to be ready for them. So as you're counting down to when they're going to start from the time you've made the offer, assign them a go-to person. If it's not you, is there someone else that can be their contact person, that can liaise with them in the lead up to them starting? And that can be part of your welcome email. Hey, look, reach out to Jess if you have any questions before you start. She'll be the person who's going to meet you on the first day, so that there's already that connection. And if they do have any questions, they know where to go. And a quick check-in a few days before they start is really important, particularly if there's been a long lead-in with notice period, just to double check, hey, we're really looking forward to having you come on board. If you've got any questions, here's just a bit of a reminder of everything. Is there anything else we can do for you? Now, the employment offer itself, as I said, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these things, but hopefully you're setting them an employment agreement, the Fair Work Information Statement, which I still find not every client understands is a legal requirement. You might have provided a position description for them. That can be really helpful for them to get a really good feel for the job. Any other paperwork, tax, super, bank details, all those normal things. Any policies or our employee handbook, all of those things should be provided to the person. And if I'm honest, my preference would be that they are returned, at a minimum, the employment agreement is returned back to me prior to the first day that they step foot on your organisation, because they're started and they haven't signed it yet. Means they haven't agreed to it yet. So if they're walking in on their first day, even if they just send you a photo of the signed last page and they mail it into you, or they bring it in on their first day, you've got evidence that they've signed their agreement. Too often that people just kind of don't double check that they've got things back signed and other things like that. And then, down the track, when we're helping them with a tricky issue, we find out that there's no signed copy of the agreement. And so, it puts a lot of doubt. So, I'm very much of the belief that, until we've got that signed offer, you're not starting on site. But think about again, these are all opportunities for touch points. We've attached all your employment agreement and other documents. Let us know if anything's unclear. We're here to help you. Offer to go through them with them if they need it. Let me know if you have any questions, and if they do, say, hey, do you want to set up a time just to have a quick Zoom call, rather than trying to do it back and forth by email? Look for those opportunities where just that little bit of extra time that you're taking is going to be worth a lot more, and things can be very misconstrued in writing via email. So you should be, from the time you've made the offer, and possibly even beforehand, you should be planning for their actual arrival. So what are they going to need? What do they physically need to do their job? What equipment do they need? Do they need a laptop? Do they need keys? Are they going to need a phone? Are they going to need a vehicle? Are you going to have to organise any of these things and order them? The first thing I always think of is, do we have a laptop here ready to pass across, or do we need a new laptop? And if we need a new one, my IT guy often is getting the first phone call as I'm recruiting. In fact, often is getting it beforehand, because don't rely on the fact that there's always a steady stream of things. I think during COVID and even beyond, there's not always a guarantee that what you need is going to be available straight away. So, you want to start looking at these things as quickly as possible. You want to plan their access. This has been a thing of mine for many years, and even in very large organisations, where what often happens is that even big organisations don't necessarily have a good onboarding process. So what happens is the person's arrived, no one's told the IT department or the person that needs to set them up in all the software, give them the passwords, no one's set them up with a code to the front door, a security pass. And so that person arrives on their first day, and that can take 2, 3, 4 days now that they're there to organise. I mean, that's not a very good first impression. So, but if someone walks in and you've got everything all there ready to go for them, that's just, again, it's a great starting point. And I know many people, I've certainly had it happen to myself, and I have in many conversations over the years, people are just so impressed that you've got a workstation there set up for them that has stationery that they need, that has, and it makes you look organised and it makes you look professional. So pre-boarding can be a signal either that you're organised and excited to have them, or you're disorganised and they've made a mistake. If someone arrives and go, oh yeah, I forgot you were arriving today. Listen, just go take a seat over there. Then you throw a manual in front of them or sit them in a computer and just say, hey, look through a whole heap of stuff. There's no plan, no thoughts gone into it. And it takes them a week to get access to this and now another week to get access to that. First of all, that's a complete waste of money, because that person is not able to be working, learning, doing anything with that time. You're basically paying them to sit there and be inefficient. But the other part is that it's just a terrible way to start someone's experience with you. So I want you to really think about, what is their first day going to look like? It doesn't have to be a detailed plan. In fact, on their first day, I don't want a detailed plan. I would hate to see a first day plan that involves 14,000 items, because that is too much information too soon. The first day plan is the key things that they need to know from day one. What they will do that day and who they will meet. They do not need to meet everybody. They do not need to meet every employee in your organisation on day one, unless there's 5 of you. If you've got 30 to 40 people in your organisation, you can take them around and introduce them to everybody. They've got 40 names to remember. Everyone else has 1. So I think day 1 is very much, who are the key people that they need to meet? They are much more likely to remember their names and remember the interaction, and you build on that. Make sure that the team knows that they're starting. Make sure that they're very aware, like send out a message the day before, hey, John's starting tomorrow, so that they might send him a welcome message, or they might stop past his desk and say, hey, welcome, my name's Paul, whatever it might be. So, on the first day, have a plan that is very much about what is an immediate requirement. Some little nice bonus touches that can be really really nice, like a handwritten welcome card or small gift. We certainly like to have a little bit of a welcome pack when someone starts with strawberry seed. It's got one of our squishy stress balls. It's got one of our strawberry seed mugs. We make sure they've got a red notebook there ready. They've got a pen. We give them some Post-its. A lot of our team work flexibly and from home, so we make sure they've got some Post-its and highlighters and other things that might be helpful for their home office when they're working at home. Sometimes we have some other bits and pieces that we might pop in there. But it's just a little nice, hey, welcome to the team. We're really happy to have you. And here's some things that are not only, a nice gift, but they're practical. That person now has a notepad that they can write all their notes in from day one. They've got a pen available. All of those things are taken care of. And schedule a lunch or a coffee to welcome them. A lunch on someone's first day is a really nice touch if you can do it. If you can, take them across and just buy them a sandwich, or just take them out for a coffee. If you know that you're going to be able to spend the first hour or 2 with them, but somebody else is going to take over from them, introduce them to someone and say, why don't you take them for a coffee? I had an intern start this week. Yeah, it was this week. It's been a long week already. And unfortunately, I ended up having to take my son to the doctor's last minute, so I got there like 10 minutes before they arrived. We were pretty organised, but not as organised as I'd have hoped. So when they first started, when they walked in the door, I was able to greet them, and I said, look, Ella's going to take you for a coffee, and to grab a coffee and show you how that all works and show you around the office. And that just gave me a few minutes to get organised, because life happens, right? So, employees, don't forget their first day. they remember their first day. And do you want them to go home thinking, wow, this was really the right decision? Or do you want them to go home going, wow, those guys had no idea, like they'd forgotten I was starting, like I didn't have anything, I don't even know what I'm going to be doing yet. That's not a good first impression. So design a very strong first day that is appropriate to your business. That warm welcome. Somebody is waiting. They know they're arriving. They're going to be available to get them. They're not stuck sitting in reception waiting for 20 minutes while someone gets off a call. You don't want any chaos or confusion. You want it to be calm and you want it to be welcoming. As I said, do not introduce them to everybody. Introduce team players. Who are their immediate team? Who are the key contacts that they might work with? That'll be very handy for them from day one. Provide them a cheat sheet. When I worked at a large organisation, we had about 80 staff. One of the things that I did, I was pretty early in my career, is I got our phone list and I actually did a version of it with photos because we'd had photos done of everybody. And so I literally, as part of the induction pack, had every department and I had all of the people and I had a photo of them. And I actually know from memory, I did it on the floor plan. So we had a floor plan layout. I mean, we are talking a long time ago and it was very early Photoshop. So my daughter's, before I was pregnant with my daughter and she's only 26. But what I did was I literally put the photos on each desk on the floor plan. So, and we had two sides to our office. It was quite a large office. So that if someone had to go and speak to so-and-so, they could look for that person on there and then they could actually have a photo of them to go and see them. Like little things like that can make a difference. Tour the facilities and think about the practicalities. So the first thing everyone's going to need to know, where's the bathroom? Don't make someone have to ask where the bathroom is. Show them where the bathroom is and show them where the kitchen is and they can get water or a cup of tea. The other thing that's really important on day one, particularly in more industrial industries, is OH&S requirements. Like, is there a requirement, there might be specific requirements that you need to take someone through on day one that are very specific to the safety measures in your organisation, where they can go, where they can't go. I've certainly worked in those environments, and part of the day one for me is always going, you need to make sure you stay between the lines, you need to make sure you don't go in these areas, you need to follow these signs, because that's incredibly important from an health and safety point of view. But don't forget the quick tour of, and even showing them where the local cafe is to get a coffee, or showing them where the closest lunch place is. Those things can make a huge difference. I've mentioned systems. What IT systems do they need access to, and how are they going to access them? Have you organised that access if you're not the person who can do it prior to them arriving? In the first day, you might have an overview introduction on the business where you get into things like the mission and values and some initial high-level information, but keep it simple and keep it conversational, because they are going to take in so much information on their first day. They are not going to retain it all. So to sit down and try and teach someone how to use every system you have on day one, not really helpful. Giving them access to the system and a little bit of time to sit down and maybe access to a few tutorials that might show them how to use that system that they can do while you're sort of doing a little bit of work, and it can be built into their plan. That's really helpful. Lunch and break times. When do they have them? Where are they? How do they have them? How do they work? Like, do you just go when you want to? Get someone on the first week to sort of take the time to go with them and say, hey, I'm going to go take a break. Do you want to come with me? I'm going to go out and get some lunch. Do you want me to show you one of the lunch places? There's nothing worse than being on your first day and you feel like you sort of left all to yourself. And share with them what your expectations are in the first week. What is that going to look like? What's your plan that you've got in place for their first week? What is that going to look like? Who are they going to be meeting with, and what might that entail? Some practical ideas to implement. So you can create your own checklist for onboarding for your business, so you ensure nothing's missed. And that's about sitting down and going, okay, if someone's going to start working here, what are all the things they need to know? And that can just start as a brain dump, and then you can just move it into categories. You can move it into, well, what should they do? They need to know on day one. What will they need to know in the first week? Maybe what could be first month. You could create a welcome pack that has lots of information in it, and I'll show you an example of ours in a moment. You might want to assign a buddy to them for their first week, so that person that you might have already assigned during your pre-boarding process, the recruitment process and the offer process, or it might be another person that they work with and go, this is your go-to person, because if you know for the rest of your week, I try and always spend at least a half a day on the first day with all of my new employees. But the fact is that it might not be possible for me to spend all day every day with them for the first week. So I make sure that they know exactly who is going to be available for them for the rest of the time. And it should be a continual feedback loop. Check in with them at the end of day one. How are they feeling? Make sure that you take the time to do that, or at least their buddy does. How they're feeling. Do you feel like they think there's anything you might have missed for them? Do they feel like they have everything they need? Again, it's going to be a lot more regular check-ins at the beginning. So I like the fact that, this quote, you don't need beanbags and barista coffee. You just need to show them you care and that you're ready for them. And that's what people need to see. So here's a bit of an example from our welcome pack, which is actually a PowerPoint, which I email to them and they can kind of go through at some point after I've spent some time with them. There's a welcome message from me. These are just screenshots from our PowerPoint. I customize it with their name. I just think it's a nice little touch. It talks a bit about our organisation. It talks about our mission and vision and values, what benefits we provide, things like flexibility, how does it actually work in practice. This is all very much written in my voice too, so it's very much a little bit of humour and things in it. What our benefits are, the fact that we have coffee tab at one of our cafes, when we have our weekly meetings, that we have monthly one-to-ones, that we have an annual check-in, how payroll works, when timesheets need to be in, pictures of their teammates, also a picture of our org structure. I put in, part of their job description as part of this. That's not the whole thing, and there's more bits and pieces in there, and there's links in there that take them out to look at things. But it's something I've built, and once it's built, it's built. You refine it as you go along. So I also have, this is an example of our employee setup form. So when I've got someone new starting, as soon as I've offered, I kind of set this up for them. And this reminds me, because I'm the person that's going to do it, have I set them up in all of these systems? Have I set up their email, which then allows me to set them up in all of these other systems? We have to set up an email. We set up an email signature, so it's there ready and waiting for them day one. Get a bio, send them a bio to complete in their first week so that we can get them added to the website. We add them to our contact list, and we organise a staff photo. So this is really, for me, all the things in my organisation that I need to think about. Do they have access to all our systems, etc. I can then hand them this, because this also has the password that I've set up for them, and so they've got this on day one to look at it, and that can be their reference. Here's also an example of our onboarding plan that literally is just part of a spreadsheet, just one snapshot of it. But basically, this is where we've brain dumped all the things that we go through, right? So, in the office, what are the sort of things we should be going through with them, or how to book meetings, book a meeting room, how to get access to the keys for the door, coffee, which is really important, printing, all of our different systems, things that we need to set up and share, what are our different packages and things, and where to find things. That this is sort of our day one, making day one first week list. And so before someone starts, we go through and go, well, who's going to go through these things? When are they going to go through it? Is it day one? Is it day two? Is it day three? And that it's been completed. So again, it doesn't have to be this is a spreadsheet, and it's something that we just sort of tick off, and it doesn't all have to be you. You don't have to do all this. You might set up, I actually use the opportunity to set up a time. I actually often, because I set them up before they start, I often actually schedule a time with them before they start, with every member of the team who I've allocated certain systems or certain packages or certain things that we do and how we work, for that person to go over with them. And I pick the person who it's one of their strengths, or it's their area that they look after. So for example, in our organisation, Kylie is kind of our guru, and so she will go take someone through, in her time she'll go through, but it's also an opportunity for them to get to know each other as well. So, and it spreads out the training. So again, it can look like anything. So just to finish up, we're going to talk about the first year, because that's about embedding and elevating the person. So it's an event. It's not, sorry, I'll start again. Onboarding is not an event, it is a journey. And it's something, it's about building trust, confidence, and capability. And that first year shapes their future with your organization. So again, like the plan shouldn't stop at day one, the plan needs to continue. So in that first week, it is about connection, clarity, and confidence. So you should be doing daily check-ins. Are they settling in? Do they have everything they need? Clarifying what your priorities and expectations are for that week and what they'll be working on, introducing them to the different systems, showing them how to use it, getting them to do some tutorials. They might be doing some job shadowing. They might be observing people. Again, you can book all this in before they start, so it's all organised. And you're really starting that knowledge build. You're sort of introducing them to the core of your business and how you work. Now, some of that might be face-to-face with people. Some of it might be through things you've set up. You might have set up videos. You might have written procedures. You might have things that they can work through. And what that also does is gives you the opportunity to spend some time with them, and then maybe they spend time going through reading your policies or your procedures. And then, it gives you a chance to get a bit of time away as well. Avoid, as I mentioned this already, avoid overloading them with too much information or training too fast. They are not going to retain it all. It is impossible. We want confidence, not perfection. And so if somebody's getting absolutely overloaded and they just don't remember anything you said, they already feel like they're starting on the back foot because people are going, oh, we showed you that on day one. If you're not using that system yet, like if the employee is not going to use the system that you're showing them, you might say, hey, we have this system, it does this, and don't show them until they actually need to use it so that they've got context. That is a whole different thing to go, well, I showed you 3 weeks ago how to use it one end to the other on your second day. Of course, they're not going to remember all of that. Schedule the meetings, as I said, with all the different people that can help you with the process. And don't assume someone will ask you questions. They actually may not. They actually might. You might need to create the space for that. So, when you're checking in with them, periodically, or maybe having other people check in, hey, did you have any questions about that? Because if you ask, they might ask you. But if you don't ask, depending on the person, they may not raise the concern. The first month is very much about role mastery and cultural immersion. So after the first week, you might move to weekly check-ins with them if they're a direct manager, and you're focusing on progress, helping them progress, and the support they need. Are they getting everything they need? During this time, you'll be clarifying role boundaries, making sure they understand what their job is, what their responsibilities are, what is and isn't okay within your organisation. You'll share a lot more detail about the team goals and the business vision and how that connects to their role, and what your actual specific expectations are for them and their performance. Really important to explain the unwritten rules. What are the unwritten rules in your organisation? What are those team norms? What are the things that we all know we do? Like, if someone's going to get coffee, they always ask everybody else. Every organisation is different. Every business is different. So, the secret handshake needs to be shared on day one, and certainly in the first week. Little things like internal language. We've recently created a lexicon, I guess, for Strawberry Seed with all the acronyms and everything that we use. And, because you don't realize how many that you use, shortcuts and things you use in your business until someone else new starts, and it may be different to their previous organisation. What are the meeting culture like? Do we all, how do we do meetings? Like, are they casual? Are they really formal? Like, again, just the more things you can explain to them and they don't have to work out themselves, the better. And really start those development discussions. Is there specific needs that you knew coming in that they would have, or is there things that are now coming to play? What are they feeling as they're going along? Do they feel like they need more help with certain things? The probation period is sort of, I guess, feedback, fit, and future planning. So this is where you're assessing whether this person's actually the right fit for you and whether they're going to stay, whether you're going to want them to stay. Hire slowly, fire quickly. Continue with structured check-ins across this process. They might be, if it's a 3 or 3 or a 6 month probation, make sure, they might just move into your regular one-to-one program. You might set up specific ones for them. Whatever it is, be consistent. Give real feedback early. Don't wait until they're like nearly 3 months in to tell them all the things you're not happy with. Those regular check-ins give you the opportunity to reinforce things they're doing well, but actually gently correct the things that they need help with. Ask them for feedback all the way through. What's working for them? What are they unclear about? What's surprised them? What's something that they feel like they're still unsure about? Is there anything, ideas that they've got that, that things that they've noticed that maybe we could do better? Like, you've got this opportunity here. And often this is where you might find out, well, actually you thought something was happening with their onboarding or their induction process or their training process, and suddenly someone's dropped the ball on it. So again, though, ask them for their feedback. It's about building confidence. You need to slowly release the reins on what they're doing, and giving them ownership of things to sort of take on board. And the more structured you are and the more deliberate you are in how you're doing that, then the earlier you can provide that ownership. If I've got a HR advisor coming on board, I've got them sitting in and shadowing meetings with as many people as we have meetings available. And for some people, if we're really busy, they can really quickly take on board what we do and how we do it, and often can transition really quickly. And refine expectations. Be clear on what your expectations look like and what success looks like as they're progressing, because that is going to be different in their first few weeks than it is as they're sort of heading to the end of their probation period. And then after that, well, it's all about regular one-to-ones, because it's growth, belonging, and retention. It's about spending the rest of their first year making sure that you're embedding them in your organization. Have regular one-to-ones, keep that conversation going, set those development goals, continue to have those conversations, recognize their contributions. If they, even if they're small wins early, call them out, give them, help boost their confidence. Check in their engagement. What would make this a place you'd want to stay long term? That's a really great question to ask someone 6 months in, 12 months in, just to sort of see how they're going, and get some feedback from them. Now, some practical ideas to implement at this point. Develop the plan. Now, this may be the same plan that you use for that first week, right? Or the first day, first week, first month. That's how I usually set mine out. First week, first day, first week, first month, first 3 months. A lot of the initial stuff is going to happen, but then there might be other things that it's like, when there's an opportunity, we will show them these things, because they don't happen very often. So it's always good to have if you've got a checklist that you can go back and check, hey, did we actually get through everything? You might find that there's gaps. So you need to set yourself reminders to do that. Set up guides for yourself, set up frameworks, set up guides. Like if you develop something to use with one person, use it again. It's now what you use. I've got an employee that's come to the end of the probation period. I'm using our annual check-in form. I've done a variation on it for that probation period check-in. Create formal connections with buddies or mentors to build relationships, and support their journey beyond that first day. So don't just, if you can have that connection, that can be something that can be ongoing and a great support for them. Or be continually looking out for opportunities to get feedback from them on how you guys are doing, what you could do better. A few months in, ask them what they could have done better with the onboarding process, because they might have some really good suggestions. Maybe assign them something manageable that they can own by the end of their first month. Again, it's going to depend on the job and what someone's doing, but it can get a little frustrating at the beginning, maybe, if someone can't necessarily jump straight into doing what they will end up doing. But create a sense of achievement, and remember that new people equal new ideas. They come in with a new perspective. They say things that you won't. So learn from them, and they might help you as well. So just to finish up, I'm going to talk about onboarding processes and systems very, very quickly, because onboarding doesn't have to be expensive. It just needs to be intentional. So you can get there, obviously, software and other things out there that you can use, but it's about developing a process that works for you and refining it as you go along. And you don't need to have expensive software to do that. So, you might already have these things in your business, or a version of them, and you can use them for onboarding. So, if you used Google Drive, you can have all of the documentation maybe for onboarding in one place that you can give someone access to. We use Guru, which is a knowledge-based program that's really searchable. So we can set up a Guru card that actually has a link to all the things we want them to go through. And so that can kind of drive some self-learning. Slack or team chat, whatever you use, can be really helpful, because you can set up a channel for new starters if you do bring in a lot of people. I just made sure for our intern, she already had a message there waiting for her that had a copy of our welcome pack on it. It had a copy of some things I wanted her to complete and do, and some steps that she could do on her day one. So after I spent time with her, I sort of left her with that, and she was able to work through those. And create videos. create videos that can be used over and over again on how to use our systems. You can say, okay, well, now that we've got you set up in the system, I've got to be in a meeting for the next hour, but hey, how about you go through these videos that we've created that'll give you a bit of a background on how we do things in our processes. They're reusable, they save time, they're really easy to do. You can do them on a phone, you can do them on your computer, they don't cost you anything. And use calendars and reminders. Schedule your check-ins. If you're going to have regular check-ins during someone's probation, diarise them from day one. If they're already set up in your system, you can add those meetings to your calendar and their calendar automatically. We also have shared calendars. We share our calendars with each other. So, pre-organise all of those things. So my final thoughts are that you can say your team is supportive, your culture is open, and your values matter, but your onboarding process is actually the proof of that. When you follow through, you prepare, you listen, you support, you involve, and you show them that they belong with you, that their time matters, and that your business will walk the talk. That's what turns a job into a commitment. And that's really what we want to do, right? We want to embed people into our organisation. So that's it for today. I did manage to just stick it into under an hour. By the way, I should have said if there's any questions, please pop them in the Q&A. I am more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. Our next webinar, I have a feeling, is going to be a popular topic. It has been asked a few different ways. We are going to be talking about harnessing Gen Z, leading the next generation at work. And how we get a lot of these discussions. And I do, in my leadership training, include a lot of discussions around managing generations. And this is, I think, the hottest topic every time. So that's what we're going to focus our August webinar on. And you will have a link to be able to book in for that when you receive a copy of this webinar. We also have a leadership training workshop, in-person one, coming up in Sydney in mid-August. The early bird actually finishes this Friday, so if you're interested in that, please reach out to our team if you've worked with us before, because you may be able to be entitled to a further discount than what's already available on the website. But yeah, we've already, I think we've got 8 people already for that. So last year it ended up selling out the last minute, and I've been told a few people this week since our email went out are looking to do it. So that'll be on the 18th of August, and we have one coming up in Geelong in October. We've just closed off our online leadership training program that started this morning. I've had a very long day, and so our next cohort have already commenced, and they'll finish in late November, and we'll look to doing another version of our 5-month online one next year. We've got a mental health first aid refresher face-to-face coming up. I believe that's either in Melbourne or Torquay from memory. You can jump on our website and all the upcoming training details are there. And that is it from me. So does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask about anything I've discussed today? Is there anything that sort of comes to mind that you'd like more information on, or you'd like me to expand on? I'm more than happy to answer those questions for you. Well, not getting anything through at the moment. That's all fine. Look, we really appreciate everybody joining us tonight. Hopefully you got some good hints and tips out of that. We will be sharing the webinar via email probably in the next 48 hours. There will be a recording sent out to anyone that registered, and also copies of the slides. And as always, please reach out to our team if you have any questions. Obviously, we do have onboarding packs that we do with our clients, and we can help them create these sort of documents and templates. And a lot of clients that have worked with us will have access to those. But it's about making them your own. That's what I want to leave you with. Like, it doesn't have to be some magical checklist that it has to be perfect. It's about, what do we need to make sure people understand when they come and work for us? How can we make sure that they're as supported as possible? Because the more supported they are, the more likely they are to be successful. And I guess the other side of that is, the more supported they are, if they are not showing that they can do the job, and you know that you have done everything you can to set them up for success, then you'll probably realize that a lot earlier along the journey as well. So Thank you very much for your time today. We really appreciate it when you come along and support Strawberry Seed. All our previous webinars are available on YouTube and on our website, and we hope to see you at our next webinar in August. Thank you.